The Odd Drunk Podcast, a very strange podcast. The drunkest show in the world. It's Jackson and Colton talking out of their ass. We don't care as long as drinks are poured. Sometimes we have our friends here. We will talk about anything. We don't care as long as we have beer. And if you let that whiskey ring. The Odd Drunk Podcast.
Welcome back to the Odd Drunk Podcast with your host,
Whoa.
and then Jackson. Whoa. Yeah, we took, actually, wait, what am I saying? We didn't take a break. We finished up our Spider-Man commentaries last week.
Yes, sir.
The timeline is a bit convoluted because I know in that episode I talk about how I may have not moved by that point, or I have moved by that point. I have moved, as we discussed in previous episodes. So if that caused any confusion, that's what happens when you make episodes.
Yeah.
It messes up the timeline. But
The timeline has been
it's
fixed.
We're in real time now. Sort of. Even though these always come out in the future.
Yes.
For us. Not
Yeah.
for you. It just came out.
You guys are talking. You're listening to past Jackson and Colton.
You're listening. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This is the past. Anyways,
Time
I
travel.
hope you guys have enjoyed those commentaries. And if you haven't checked them out, go check them out. It could be a lot of fun especially if you actually watch it with us. I think that makes it a lot more
Oh yeah.
rewarding. It gives more context, and I will admit I don't really do that much, but I watched a couple of I've done a couple of the Weekly Planet commentaries before. They're pretty good.
Yeah. No.
I've been behind on their content though. It's been a while since I've listened to them. Just been busy.
I think I've listened to a few of the Mr. Sunday movie videos recently, but
nice. Anyways, we don't need to plug them.
yeah. They should be plugging us.
They should plug us. But we can plug our other podcast, our morning show, Morning Oddities.
Yes.
Go
listen.
Go listen to it. It's we try to be more clean, more family friendly there. Sometimes we fail, but we never go as far as we do on this show.
No.
And keep it short and sweet. I think the longest one we did was the Oppenheimer one, I think. And that was like 45 minutes.
Yeah, that was a long one, but we usually keep it around half an hour.
Yeah. Our most recent one is even shorter than that. So if that's the kind of pacing you want for a podcast, check that out. Also, It's a great way for us to discuss other things going on, things that are interesting. Things that interest us outside of this, so we can just cut to the chase here. But we always go on tangents anyways. Yeah, we are both real excited for this episode. We're doing another album reviews, and
yes, it's not been too long since the last one, but damn, we just love doing these album reviews.
It hasn't been a super long time, but the last one was our metal punk one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we did one for Black History Month back in February. So those was Living Color, Bad Brains,
Denzel
Curry, and
Labi
Siffre. Yeah, I always forget
that was a lot of
his
fun.
name. But yeah, that was a fun one. The metal one was fun. But now we're going back to just our more traditional formula.
Yeah.
Where we pick one new album, one old album each.
Yeah.
And genre, it could be anything. It really just depends on what I'm listening to at the moment when we do these, though. Sometimes I want to do these just so I can talk about what I'm listening to at the moment. But
our thought process and how we pick albums can be interesting, because I picked both of my albums not because I'm specifically have been listening to those albums a ton recently, but just because we haven't talked. They're artists that I want to talk about a little bit. So
right, and one of the albums I picked for tonight's for this episode is from a band that I've just recently got into. Really, I've heard them before, but now I've really dipped my toes into their works. And then also the other one is one I've been wanting to talk about since it released early this year. So yeah, I'm definitely excited. And there's a lot of, I will say before we get into this, this year has been great for like alternative music.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of good stuff coming out. One of the albums I'm doing, I don't want to spoil it yet unless you read the description, but I'm not going to spoil it for the listeners. Readers, you nerds, you spoiled it for yourselves. But but yeah, there was a couple albums I could have picked for my new one from this year. The Hives just came out with a new album. It's great stuff, just great garage, garage punk rock. Nice quick 30-minute album. Great album. Go listen to Bogus Operandi. That's a great introduction into their new stuff.
Oh yeah.
The Queens of Stone Age just did one, in Times New Roman, I think. Foo Fighters did it out, a new album. I guess it's their White Album, and it's a very emotionally poignant album after the death of Taylor Hawkins. I was close picking that one, and I was close picking the Hives. But the one I landed on, I've not only got to listen to more, but I think it's one of the standouts of the year.
Yeah.
Anyways,
this is a fun thing.
I love fun things.
Within the I didn't know about this until I'm actually looking on a webpage right now, like learning about it. Within the last couple of days, Rolling Stones have announced a new album
Oh, really?
to release in, I think, October.
What was the last one? Was it Blue and Lonesome, the blues cover one?
Yeah, they just released an album of them playing some blues covers back in 2016.
And that's very traditional Stones.
Yeah, well, their first 2.5 albums were all blues covers because they didn't start having original songs until their third album, and that third album is also mostly covers.
Well, yeah, a lot of bands in that era. I mean, the Beatles too are just as guilty. Elvis, in that era, it was very much commonplace to do covers, do your versions and of like standards and stuff, and sometimes just songs that just came out. There'd be a bunch of covers, and it was okay. It was like accepted. Now you post the cover on YouTube, you get copyright claimed.
Yeah.
It's funny how that landscape has changed, but yeah, those early Stones albums, I still love the early ones, honestly.
Yeah.
But
this is
I think the one you selected is
yeah, this is reporting from The Sun. It's going to be released end of October. They're going to release a single pretty soon. It's going to be their first album of original content since 2005. Charlie Watts, rest in peace, will be heard on the record, it says. And Elton John and Paul McCartney will have cameos in the record.
Wait, I just got back. Did you say McCartney and Elton John?
Yeah. So the album, it's said Charlie Watts will have recordings from that they did before he died.
Oh, nice.
On there. And Elton John and Paul McCartney will put in cameos.
Nice. I always love a good cameo.
So that's fun. First album of original stuff.
Rest in peace, Charlie Watts.
Yes, rest in peace.
I heard, and rest in peace, Brian Jones, and he passed away a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but he was on this album you're going to talk about.
1968. No,
he wasn't.
Nope.
Thought he was. Anyways, you're the Stones expert. I also wanted to say that I know Mick Jagger, I think, had a health scare just recently.
I heard something about that.
80.
Yeah.
Or I believe he's 80. I think they're all 80 except for Keith Richards. He's always been 80.
He's been 80 since 1972.
Right. Yeah, Mick Jagger. Yeah, I think he's
Anyway,
fine now. I think he just had a
yeah.
scare though at one of their shows or something.
Before we get into this, I have a question for you, Jackson.
Yeah.
What are you drinking?
So I do have some wine, just a little bit. Well, not a little bit, I guess, but sippy
Good.
cups. I don't spill it.
Good healthy healthy
Yeah,
sippy
good
cup of
a
wine.
healthy portion. But I also have my girlfriend got some, and it wouldn't be my first choice, but for a non-alcoholic option, it's actually pretty good. It's the Heineken 0.0.
Yeah.
They're alcohol-free beer, and
I've
it's
had that,
pretty good
yeah.
actually. It's a nice, refreshing malt, and it has the hop like flavor in it, extract. I don't know exactly how to make non-alcoholic beers, but it's good.
Yeah.
It gives you it gives you that feeling, that the flavor of it kind of. I would like to try some more. I'd like to do direct comparisons. I think it could be a fun game. It would definitely require us to do video,
Yeah.
which we keep teasing. I have a new webcam now, so I should look much better. It's 1440p, so there you go.
Nice.
Got it on a good sale. It's a Sony, and I can do different backlights, which is
Hell yeah.
fun. And it has the privacy shutter. So see you later. Glad it has that. They all do, really. I don't think any of them don't, except for your built-in. My built-in laptop one doesn't. You would
No,
have to
mine does, yeah.
tape it. But to do a direct comparison, like get Core's Edge and a Banquet, or whatever Edge is supposed to be a equivalent of, probably light. I think most of these just try to do the light version. I heard the Guinness, the zero Guinness was pretty good, or whatever they call it.
Yeah, Guinness Zero. That's good stuff. It's so a lot of I've tried quite a few NA beers at this point because I'm taking a little break from drinking still.
Right.
And I find a lot of NA beers, even like the good ones, still distinctly taste like NA beers.
It's an aftertaste.
They have an aftertaste to them.
There's definitely an aftertaste here.
And often the best NA beers are able to work with that. So it's like they don't try to cover it up. They just make it part of it. And they can be pretty good. But there's only a couple that I've tasted that I thought like didn't have that aftertaste. And Guinness Zero is one of them. It was pretty good.
Well, because Guinness has such a distinct flavor.
Yeah.
That probably covers it up, But no, this Heineken one's pretty good. I mean, really, what I chalk it up to, the experience is just like a malty version of a soda water, or of a whatever you call it, a carbonate. All those waters out there, all those carbonated waters, LaCroix, and all that stuff.
They also make for like non-alcoholic and gluten-free people too. They make hop water as a thing, and it's basically like a seltzer that has hops in it, and they don't taste like beer, but it's kind of has that maltiness to it.
But yeah, I've been cutting back. I've been having beer when I go out some, but I don't have any at the house, just because I can go through so much so fast, and it gets you bloated, get you drunk too much.
Well,
I already feel so much better just cutting it out for a while.
Yeah.
And we are the drunk
what
podcast.
I'm hoping is that if I'm cutting back my drinking, I'm also saving money on drinking.
It does save a lot of money too.
Which means when I do buy booze, I can buy nice stuff.
Exactly.
So I'm still doing.
Well, we did this a couple years ago where I was only buying stuff for the podcast.
Yeah,
and I would save it for the podcast.
Yeah. So like I'm continuing my sobriety. I'm trying to go a whole month, which means I've done 3 weeks so far, which means
Nice.
one more week on podcast schedule terms.
Right.
I'll be
Right.
sober still.
That's really
but,
good.
I'm
And
drinking
yeah, we
some
will.
iced tea tonight.
Nice. Good. Yeah, we will always be the Odd Drunk Podcast. We're not gonna change the name.
And
Like I said, we would have to go 100 episodes sober, and
I
then we
I
could be
also want
the.
to I also want to share this. I've just been drinking these because they're cheap and it's something to sip on. Kroger has these like flavored sparkling waters you can buy.
Yeah,
And they're sugar free and all that
this
and
is a
super cheap.
depressing what we're drinking. No, I'm just
But I
kidding.
just want to share it because of what its title, what they call it. It's
Oh yeah,
sparkling water beverage.
beverage. Gonna get much more generic.
It's the most generic name ever, and I kind of love it.
Right.
I'm just
Yeah.
enjoying some sparkling water beverage.
Water beverage. Yeah. I've been enjoying. I've always been a fan of these. I believe they're called ice drinks or ice
yeah,
waters,
those are good.
and they're sparkling waters, and they taste good. My thing
Yeah,
is
they're like
a lot of
lemonade
the
and stuff
sparkling
like
waters out there just taste like salty water, or they just taste bad. Like LaCroix, I cannot stand LaCroix.
Mm-hmm.
I can tolerate one if it's like ice cold, but they're just
In
not my thing.
general, like sparkling water, I prefer it when it's very minimal on the flavoring.
Well,
Like,
that's why I
like
think
just
that's why I
like
like this
yeah, like just like San
Heineken Zero.
Pellegrino, a San Pellegrino, and or whatever you call it, and you just like squirt a little like lime juice into that or lemon
Those are
juice into it.
good.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, my thing is if you're gonna do flavoring, I rather it just taste like a lemonade instead
Yeah.
of just like a little hint. I rather
Yeah.
no flavoring.
Well, that's
or
why
all.
I like the non-alcoholic beers because yeah, you can tell they're
Yeah.
non-alcoholic, but they still taste like, you know,
No, I
they
really enjoy
they
this
don't,
one. They're
you
refreshing.
know, a lot of them they don't
So
just
shout out
taste
to Heineken.
like sparkling water that's beer flavored. They're at least trying to actually taste like beer.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend
No,
doesn't see the point. She's just like, if you're not going to drink, why would you drink non-alcoholic beer? Like, why would you drink beer if you're
it's
not
hard to go
if you're
cold
sober?
turkey like that. And
I'm
also,
also I like beer. So
yeah, and I know you don't plan on going permanently sober, but if you did, I would
yeah,
totally support you. But
yeah,
you know, it's a good just like intermediate, like it's like when you're taking a break, but you still want that association, you know?
yeah, yeah. Feels good to have
Yeah.
a beer after work.
Yeah.
You know?
And you know, it's fine.
Yeah. And
Anyways,
and like I said, I'm not doing
yeah,
this forever. I'm just doing a whole I'm doing a whole month.
it's good to take break.
And
You
then
know,
I'll
it's
be drinking on the podcast again. And I'll tell you
yeah.
what, we'll take a shot when
All right.
when it'll be my
But yeah,
first
I
that'll be
mean,
my first drink in a month or whatever.
yeah, for a while, you know, I was getting just a constant flow of beer,
Mhm.
and that's just not good for you. It's just not good. So yeah, I've been just having a beer when I'm out at a bar or restaurant or for special occasions, but I don't have any at the house, and I feel a lot better, honestly. I still been enjoying wine. I love me some wine, some Cabernet Sauvignon.
Ooh, yes. Anyway,
But let's stop getting so congratulations, but it's also kind of a sad what you're drinking.
my sparkling water
Beverage.
I just
Yes.
wanted to share it because I think the name is hilarious.
That's a great
It's the
name.
most bargain
Yeah.
brand names can be pretty funny anyway, like Dr. K.
Right.
But I think this is my favorite one yet because it's
Sparkling water
the
beverage.
most bargain brand sounding name ever.
Yep.
And
Anyways, let's get into this. So, as we do with our usual, well, if any album review, actually, we go in chronological order of release
Yeah.
date. So naturally,
And we
and
didn't
it
do
always
this.
seems to work out.
We didn't do
It
this
always
on
works
purpose,
out.
but it is gonna go. We take turns. 'Cause
It
it just
always works that way. I Has there been one where we
I
do
think
2 in a row?
I think there's been 1 or 2 episodes where that's happened,
I
but
think maybe the metal one because both of mine were later and yours were earlier. So I think that was the only
yeah,
one that broke the formula. But it usually just so happens where we do each other one, which is good. So you're gonna start us out here
yeah.
with
So
introduce it.
foreshadowing a few minutes ago, talking about the Rolling Stones. I chose for my older album Exile and Main Street.
Yes.
Um, uh,
Double
ni-
album.
1972. Yeah, it's a long one.
It is.
And I chose it for no reason other than I love the Rolling Stones, and we've not really talked about the Rolling Stones.
No, we haven't. No, we
Um,
have not.
and I think Exile on Main Street is their best album from start to finish.
That seems to be what a lot of people think. Like I looked up their worst or best albums on different outlets, and that one's always up there or at the top. And I don't have a lot of knowledge on all the Rolling Stones albums. I've listened to some Sticky Fingers, Beggar's Banquet, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But this album, I never really listened. In fact, this is my first time listening to the full album. I've only heard some songs from it. And to be honest, and this is nothing against the album at all. In fact, I think it's in its favor. There's not a lot of huge classic Rolling Stone hits here.
No,
really, the main one that I've heard played on the radio is Happy.
Happy.
And
I hear
that's what
Sweet
Keith Richards
Virginia.
singing,
Yeah, it is.
apparently.
I hear Sweet Virginia come up sometimes on the radio.
Oh, I love that one, by the way.
But yeah, no, it doesn't have like any of their big hits, really.
But like you said, it's just a complete experience.
Yeah.
Just a great album.
Yeah. And I think it's a good representation of what I think is the Stones' best era. So
early 70s.
Yeah, late 60s, early 70s.
Late 60s, early 70s.
Beggar's Banquet comes out in 1968. And it's not that they didn't have good albums before that. I mean, Out of Our Heads is a pretty great album. And they definitely had some hits before that. But I think before Beggar's Banquet, the Rolling Stones, both commercially and artistically, were really kind of riding the coattails of the Beatles.
Right, doing derivations of what the Beatles doing. Like, what's the album they did in a reaction to Sgt. Pepper's? It was like Satan's something like
it's
and it like the cover is very much like a parody.
Yeah,
and also with the Stones, and also a lot of bands.
Their Satanic Majesty's Request.
That one.
Yeah.
So with the Stones and a lot of bands of that era, you had the UK and US releases.
Yeah,
there it is. Their Satanic Majesty's Request. Cool, fun cover. Beggar's Banquet. I love how simple that cover is. And then I think my the Toilet,
yeah. Beggar's Banquet is a fun one because
I always like Let It Bleed.
Fun
cover. It's like a cake on top of a record or whatever.
The original cover for Beggar's Banquet, I think so the graffiti toilet was like had a bunch of backlash to it. So the original cover, they ended up changing it for the original release. And it wasn't just the graffiti toilet, but because it says on somewhere on there, John loves Yoko.
Oh,
so they were poking fun at Yoko on that,
right,
and that pissed some people off.
That's pretty good. But back to Exile Main Street. I gotta go run, but just keep going. I just gotta get one thing.
So I mean, what I think is the best kind of era of the Stones from Beggar's Banquet in 68 to Exile on Main Street in 72. And I wouldn't say that they really went downhill too much from there. I mean, they have some good stuff later on, but I really feel that Exile on Main Street is kind of their peak. Oh, you're back.
Yeah, catch me up.
Yeah, I was saying I just think that Exile on Main Street is kind of their peak because with Beggar's Banquet they kind of broke off from writing the coattails of the Beatles, and then Beggar's Banquet, Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, and then Exile on Main Street, and then Exile on Main Street after that. I mean, they had some good stuff. Some Girls was good, Tattoo You was good, but they kind of changed a bit after that. Exile was,
Sorry
I think.
Sorry if you accidentally heard a little expert of a Metallica song. I recorded one earlier. In fact, this album could have easily been on any of these album reviews.
Yeah.
Ride the Lightning. But anyways, I just had to get my notes. I took some notes on my phone. I don't know why I don't have a computer, but I still take my phone.
But yeah,
but can I tell you my first impression?
Yeah, I want to hear what your impression.
This album feels like a family reunion, like on the front porch in the summer barbecue. Like that's what the vibe it gives me.
Yeah.
Maybe because my grandma, my Nana, listened to Stones constantly back when I was a kid, a baby. So it's like burning my memory. So like a lot of these songs, and I don't know if it was specifically this album, but it felt extremely familiar. And sounded familiar, and yeah, it just gives me that nostalgic, just like barbecue front porch vibe.
Yeah.
And this, it's just classic Stones. I mean, just bluesy rock, gospel. You get some country in there. Some standout songs for me. Let me just pull this up. I can't remember all the names, but Sweet Virginia, I love that one. Happy's fun. Little Black Angel, or what was it called?
Yeah.
That's a good one. Rip This Joint. I love Ventilator Blues. That's just a really cool blues rock song. And it's just it's almost comforting just how it brings me back to those early summer,
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
There's definitely kind of a reason for that. So another kind of fun thing to talk about with this album is kind of the behind the scenes of what went through making it. So they started writing and recording this in London while they were working on Sticky Fingers.
Okay.
And that was in 1971, but in 72 they left the UK and Keith Richards rented out a villa in southern France.
Okay.
Because they were tax exiles. They had not paid taxes in like 6 or 7 years.
Wow. I know the taxes were ridiculous in the UK
I don't
artists.
know all the details about it, but like it seems like they didn't know, like they had hired like an accountant to do it, and he like didn't. So they owed the UK government a small fortune, so they were advised to flee.
So they just fled the country.
So they went to France. And
close this up.
Yeah, I mean, this is and Mick Jagger for much of the recording while they were in while they were in France, Mick Jagger wasn't really around a lot of the time. So it was kind of a weird situation. So they did, because where they were in France, there was no recording studios at all. So they set
up like a home one.
They set up a home studio in the basement of this villa, And there's stories of like they couldn't fit everyone into the same room, so they would have cords and microphones going through the hallway to different rooms and stuff in the basement, and they would stay
I
up.
think Led Zeppelin did the same thing
Yeah.
on
So
some of their albums.
I got this is just from Wikipedia, but it's kind of a fun little kind of insight here. So recording began in earnest sometime near the middle of June. Bassist Bill Wyman recalls the band working all night, every night from 8 in the evening until the following morning, 3 the following morning, for the
Oh
rest of
wow.
the month. Wyman said of the period, not everyone turned up every night. This was for me one of the major frustrations of the whole period. For our previous two albums, we had worked well and listened to the producer Jimmy Miller at Nelcote, which is the villa. Things were very different, and it took me a while to understand why. It says by this time Richards had begun a daily habit of using heroin. Thousands of pounds of heroin worth of heroin flowed through the mansion each week, along with visitors such as William S. Burroughs, Terry Southern, Graham Parsons, John Lennon, and Michael Chess, son of famous blues artist Leonard Chess. Parsons was asked to leave in early July in 71, the result of his obnoxious behavior and attempt by Richards to clean the house of drug users as the result of pressure from the French police. So in the early 70s, there was the whole thing of Keith Richards, there was a warrant out for his arrest and all that in France.
Right.
And that began during the recording of this.
Oh wow. I was surprised to learn that he did the vocals on Happy.
Yeah, so that comes up here as part of the story. So Richard's substance abuse frequently prevented him from attending the sessions that continued in his basement, while Jagger and Wyman were often unable to attend for other reasons. This often left the band in a position of having to record in altered forms. A notable instance of the recording was one of Richard's most famous songs, "Happy," recorded in the basement. Richard said in 82, "Happy was something I did because I was, for one time, early for a session. There was Bobby Keys and Jimmy Miller. We had nothing to do and suddenly picked up the guitar and played this riff. So we cut it and it's the record. It's the same. We cut the original track with a baritone sax, a guitar, and Jimmy Miller on drums, and the rest of it was built over the track. It was just an afternoon jam that everyone said, wow, yeah, work on it." So
that afternoon jam, and
yes.
that album gives me that vibe.
Yeah.
Of an afternoon jam.
Yeah. And and Jagger was rarely around during this. So what happened? So after the period in France, they finished up recording it in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah.
At Sunset Sound Records. And that was where Mick Jagger was actually around for it. So I guess they recorded much of it in France, took it to Los Angeles, and kind of that's where they did a lot of the vocals. That's where they added the gospel stuff, like the background singers and stuff like that. So
there's actually a lot more going on with this album than you would know on first listen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there's a lot of personnel here. You got keys, trumpets, double bass, the sax. I mean, yeah, a lot of these songs. In fact, this whole album has, I guess, their recording process just it really you can hear it.
Yeah, this
was done
a messy album like process of making it, but it ended up like by some accounts it seems like it's almost a miracle this album like got finished.
Right.
But it turned out just well, and I also think part of the reason because this album wasn't recorded in a way of the main members of the Stones sitting around and writing songs. It was recorded in the sense of just whoever was around.
Right.
And often that meant not the Rolling Stones for some of the recordings. It was just other like studio guys that they had around. Like again, Happy was Keith Richards and just a couple other guys.
Studio guys. They're just friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good stuff. I don't have much else to say other than it's just a fun classic, sounding Stones album. In fact, if you are new to the Stones, I would definitely recommend this be your first.
Yeah, definitely.
Or you could listen to their 80s stuff and hate it.
Not all of their 80s stuff is bad. There's some gems in there. Tattoo Year's a good album. That was 81, I think.
Early 80s, yeah.
Yeah. What you don't want to listen to is Mick Jagger's like solo stuff.
Hey.
Is
Go listen to Dancing in the Street with David Bowie and Mick Jagger.
Go watch the YouTube edit where they remove the music and it's just Mick Jagger and David Bowie being insane.
Yeah. Well, just being themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
I showed that video to a coworker of mine.
What's some of your favorite songs?
Oh,
because you picked it.
Yeah, Rocks Off is awesome. Sweet Virginia. Tordenfrayed, I like.
Oh, that's a good one.
Happy is a classic. Stop Breaking Down.
Tumbling Dice.
Tumbling Dice, yeah. Stop Breaking Down is a cover of a Robert Johnson song.
It sounded familiar.
Yeah.
I knew I recognized it.
Yeah. Not the first time they
I think I've heard a lot of people cover that song, actually.
Yeah, not the first time they had covered Robert Johnson.
No.
Keith Richards, by all accounts, is a big fan.
Oh, you think?
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, go listen. And also, I need to update it. I'm gonna make it a project of mine tonight to update our Spotify playlist to include, some great tracks from each of the albums we've talked about for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
We have a Spotify, the Odd Drunk playlist, and yeah, it's all over the place because these album reviews are all over the place, and that's how I like it. But yeah, go check out Exile on Main Street. They have like the deluxe editions on Spotify and whatever. If do you have the vinyl? Do you have the record?
No.
Oh, so that's going to be one of your future purchases.
At some point I will. Thinking about it, I'm not sure
on vinyl.
Actually not sure I have any Stones on vinyl, which is crazy.
I swore you had a Let It Bleed on vinyl.
Did I? I don't think so.
Somebody did. Or I almost bought it or something.
Yeah.
I've seen it in somebody's house or something. I don't know. Apparently band Pussy Galore covered this whole album.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. It even has basically the same album cover, but with like their pictures.
Yeah, I've not listened to that version. No, but I find it interesting that this is it's not an unpopular opinion to say this is one of their best albums, but also doesn't have any big hits on it. It was still commercially successful. I mean, like very successful.
No, it's one of those where it's just a great album as it is, like all put together. Like if you extracted one song from this, you'd be like, yeah, that's a cool bluesy song, but it works when it's in this package.
Yeah,
I mean, when it really works.
So this is some stats here. It's been listed as one of the greatest albums of all time. Acclaimed Music put it in the 10th best ranked records on critics' all-time list. In 98, Q Magazine readers voted it the 42nd greatest album of all time. In 2000, and in the year 2000, it placed it at number 3 of the 100 greatest British albums.
Wow, that's saying a lot.
Like it's consistently like by
And a lot of good British albums.
publications listed in the best Rolling Stone magazine, of course, ranked at number 7 on the 500 greatest albums of all time.
What is the story with Rolling Stone magazine? Did they get the name from the Rolling Stones?
I actually don't know.
I've always wondered if there was like an affiliation between the two.
Yeah, I actually have never bothered to look into that.
So yeah, it was they Wenner decided to name his magazine Rolling Stone in a nod to an essay Gleason had written about the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, and the cultural impact of the 1960s. So it is because
it's named after the Rolling Stones, but it's not affiliated with the Rolling Stones.
No, but it's hey,
yeah.
I mean, the Rolling Stones is a good name. It's a good band name.
They pulled it from a Muddy Waters
name your
song.
magazine. Like a Rolling Stone.
Mm-hmm. That's where they pulled the name from.
And then Bob Dylan also did that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So there you go.
Anyway, let's move on to your first album here.
Yeah, let's move on to my old album. This big shift here, and I'm excited to talk about it. Faith No More, The Real Thing, released 1989. Man, 89 was a hell of a year. We did video games in 1989. Think about all the movies that came out that year. Last Crusade, Batman, other movies, but really you just need those two movies.
And some other ones.
We
swear.
I've done another album in 89, coincidentally. Sonic Temple from The Cult. Just a hell of a year.
Yeah, that's a great album.
Yeah. A hell of a year. I love this era of music, and because it's a big transition era, going into the 90s, late 80s. And so yeah, Faith No More, this is their third album, but most consider it their second proper album because their first was just a rough recording, not, didn't have real good production. Their second one was their first studio album.
Mm-hmm.
And it had We Care a Lot on it, and that's with their first vocalist, Chuck Mosley. This album is the introduction of Mike Patton. And if you look into his work, he's done with stuff with Mr. Bungie, all kinds of works. I just learned that Mike Patton did the Ninja Turtles theme song on the new video game they made, the Shredder's Revenge game. That's him.
Oh, cool.
Apparently. Because I was listening to Ninja Turtles stuff, getting hyped for the movie a few weeks ago, and then I saw Mike Patton, and I was like, "What?" And yeah, he did that.
Nice.
And I love the album cover. That's also another thing to talk about here. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with this album cover. It's like a fire on some milk with rock background, but it just screams epicness. In fact, this whole album, and we're gonna get into your reservations on the album and some of the, because you said there was things that I don't know if they bothered you, but you have things.
They made some interesting choices, I think.
Interesting. No, definitely made some interesting choices here. But it's just epic. Hence their second song on the album, Epic. And that's the best way to describe that song. And for a long time, I'm gonna be honest with you. So, like, I've recently gotten Faith No More in the last couple, month or two. I've known of them. I've known of Epic. I've known of Falling to Pieces. Those are the two biggest ones, coincidentally, from this album. I heard Angel Dust. Their next album after this is really great stuff as well, and I've listened to it. It is great stuff. But this one, when I heard Epic, when I heard his vocals on that, I wasn't into it. I wasn't into the vocals. In fact, I wasn't into any kind of nasally vocals like that. Like Lane Staley, Alice in Chains, rest in peace, man. But I was not a fan of Alice in Chains for a long time. It took until I was a teenager, 16 or so, to really dive into their content and get into it and appreciate it. So yeah, I was adverse to Mike Patton's vocals here, but listening to the entire album, and also I really like Epic now. It's fun to play, it's fun to jam to, it's epic. But listening to this whole album, the real thing, he has such a wide array of vocals here.
Oh yeah.
And of course,
Yeah.
they helped pioneer, like rap rock. They were one of the first. I mean, yeah, the Beastie Boys were doing it, but this was a rock band that had rap in their music.
Yeah.
And I mean, we wouldn't have. I mean, and they pioneered like new metal, like System of Down, Rage Against the Machine. And I have a fun story to tell. There was a guy in the early '90s who had just attempted suicide, living with his grandma, and then he saw Faith No More playing at the MTV Music Awards, playing Epic,
Hmm.
and he decided he was so inspired that he turned his life around, formed his own band, and that was Corey Taylor from Slipknot. They literally
Oh,
saved his life
wow.
because he
Oh.
was just so inspired by their music, and then yeah, we get Slipknot from that. Um, but this album is way more than just epic or Falling Pieces. Falling Pieces has that, a very iconic opening bass line. I love it. It's good stuff.
Uh-huh.
And their opening song track here
Oh, the opening track is a banger.
from Out of
That's
Nowhere is definitely a banger. Great
that's
introduction.
great track.
Great introduction to the album. And then you have Surprise You're Dead, which is like a thrash metal song. It's like a parody of thrash metal, but it just happens to be a really good thrash metal song. Short, quick to the point. Um, and then I think the standout here, honestly, though, one of my favorites is Zombie Eaters.
That's a great one. That I wrote in my notes.
That
Makes me want to play Doom.
It's very Doom energy.
Yeah.
And if we go into the lyrics, because we're gonna look into some lyrics on some of these songs, and if there's any Stones ones you want to pull up, you
Yeah.
can go for it. But essentially, Zombie Eaters is from the perspective of a baby. It's about a baby being a baby and how scary and that is. Not for the baby, for the parents, and it just makes me, not want to have a baby even more, which that's good because I never wanted one anyways. But thank you, Faith No More. And it's about just how like it's called zombie eaters because you just eat babies just eat, sleep, poop, piss, shit, scream. Just very routine.
Yeah.
And actually, I was looking into the song title and its meaning and everything. And most Americans are what considered zombie eaters.
Hmm.
And why that is because like I forget where I got this from. This is just pulling stuff out of my head. I'm not gonna try to find it again. This is not, and I get a college podcast, educational podcast, but like something like 80% or so of Americans let their food go cold to find something to watch before they eat. They always watch TV while they eat. Most Americans.
Hmm.
So you have like these
Yeah.
routines when you eat. So you're a zombie eater.
Yeah.
You act like a zombie. But yeah, the whole song is just very epic. Jib Martin, which amazing. I love his guitar work here. This one guy made a YouTube comment on the YouTube video of Zombie Eaters that was like his guitar is like a 8-foot neon sword cutting through, and it literally quite cuts through the middle of the production of these songs, like the triplets he does and stuff. Just very cool, heavy stuff. And Zombie Eaters then leads into the real thing, and you get more of those kind of like triplets and stuff, and that's good stuff. Woodpecker from Mars, I think, is a great instrumental break. Very weird,
yeah.
eclectic, has like and then it leads into their cover of War Pigs. And yeah, there's a few songs on here where Mike Patton sings with a more just classic kind of rock belter voice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, I want more of that. But then he goes
their cover
into
of
weird
War Pigs
stuff. Yeah, it's a fun cover. And yeah, and they were at the time. So you had Red Hot Chili Peppers' Mother's Milk came out the same year, which is
Yeah.
also a great album. I think yeah, RH Red Hot Chili Peppers' best stuff was in this era, essentially in the early '90s and mid 2000s. But I'm not a huge fan of them. But it's funny because Anthony Kiedis at the time they had a rivalry between Faith No More and the Red Hot Chili Peppers that Mike
Yeah.
Patton stole Anthony Kiedis's style and their everything, and they're like, well, they are a very different band. They're a lot heavier, and they just kind of laughed it off, and Anthony Kiedis just kept, just being a real butthurt about it.
Yeah.
But I would choose this album over Mother's Milk.
Yeah. So I overall liked this album.
So what do you have to say?
Yeah. So, but
So what's your standout tracks?
my standout track, Zombie Eaters. Edge of the World was super weird.
That's a really good closer, though. It's weird, though.
Felt a lot like they were just fucking around and decided, how, our old band, we'd be, we play like rock and blues and shit like that. But
it's definitely a weird
but
ending.
every once in a while, and all bands do this, where you'll be sitting around, talking about, you're not working on any songs, and then the drummer, just because they're bored, starts going, and they start playing some jazzy shit just because you're bored. And then it felt a lot like that type of energy, like they were just fucking around in the studio because they're bored. And then they were like, actually, that was kind of cool. Let's record that.
Right.
Woodpecker from Mars, I thought that was pretty cool.
That was wild.
The Real Thing is a long ass song, but I think it works.
It really does. It's a big ballad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that whole second half of the album, they all kind of lead into each other in a very satisfying way. Not quite like a medley of songs, but I love how they're put together.
Surprise You're Dead also. I really
that's
like
a banger.
I had some. It's funny that you mentioned Epic.
This is the one you don't like, isn't it?
I think it's by far the worst song on the album. And I also think Falling to Pieces. I'm not crazy about it. It's not.
No,
as bad
I'm not
as
crazy
Epic.
about Falling to Pieces. I mean, it's got its, like I said, the bass line.
And it took me off guard because I thought the opening track from Out of Nowhere is fantastic. Like, I turned on the album and I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then Epic started and I'm like, okay, less cool.
Really? See, for me, I think From Out of Nowhere is it's a good opening track.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Epic is when the album really takes off to me. But I used to not like that song. For a long time, I didn't like that song.
So I wrote down some thoughts.
Okay.
I wrote, it's funny that track number 3 is called Falling to Pieces because the album begins to fall to pieces in track number 2. Did Rage Against the Machine replace Zach De La Rocha with Marky Mark? And then I said, but not to worry. It was a surprise that the album starts to redeem itself with Surprise You're Dead.
No, I mean, I will say the second half of the album is the best half.
Yeah, I just.
What's it with that Epic that really bothers you? Is it the chorus vocals or the rap or both?
It's mostly the rap. So rap rock
is just not your thing, or is it just?
I think it's really, really hard to pull off.
It's hard to
very
pull off.
Few bands ever have. And I don't think they pull it off in this.
Interesting.
There's a couple other songs
really kicked off the rack rock thing.
Yeah, there's a couple other songs where they do like small snippets of it and it works in smaller amounts, but Epic does a lot of it. And
fair enough.
I mean, let's put it this way:
is it just because the rhymes are too simple, or is it just the way he does it? The way
he doesn't have very good flow, I think.
He does. He cuts it off a lot, and he does like the "what is it?"
Yeah,
He
and
what I like about Mike Patton, um, he plays a lot with tones and sounds. Like there's always all these different sounds coming out of his mouth.
yeah,
He
and
has fun with it.
I mean, let's put it this way. I didn't look up when this album came out before I listened to it, and I wasn't super familiar with Faith No More beforehand. I think I had heard a few of their songs on the radio. And with by the end of Epic, I was like, when did this album come out? It sounds like a late 90s, trying to ride the coattails of
No,
90s rap rock.
they started it.
Yeah, and it's just kind of, I don't think it worked. I At least in
Well,
that song. And Falling to Pieces I just thought had some weird instrumental stuff going on, which is I'm more okay with that one than with Epic, but I think Epic just kind of threw me off the album enough where it didn't it the
well, you're in the
Surprise You're
mind
Dead was the one that
brought you back.
brought me
Brought
back
you
as
back
like, okay,
into it.
okay, it's
Well, you would be in the minority because Epic is like their biggest song.
yeah, no, yeah. um
But I can see how it threw you off. Maybe you weren't expecting that, or you didn't know there would be rap in there. Um, for me, it wasn't the rap that ever bothered me. I thought that was fine. I think it fits very well with the instrumentation, with the song. I think if it was any more, I think if it was more complex rhymes or flow, that would take away from the instrumentation. I think it would just be too much. I think it's I think it works that it's, more simple, cut and dry. But then it was the chorus that bothered me. You want, the
yeah.
very nasally vocals, but I think the chorus works very well actually after more listenings and actually appreciating it. And for me, yeah, it was definitely one of those songs. I was like, yeah, the guitar works cool, drum works really good, all the work is good. I'm just not a huge fan of the vocals. But
Yeah.
then I listened to their other stuff and I was like, oh, this guy actually is good. And then I came to appreciate Epic even more. And what makes it, and you can't deny that it does, like the instrumentation sounds epic.
Yeah.
And what contributes to that, it's making this constant climb up in the chorus and everything. And you have the guitar sweeping up higher notes and stuff, and that's fun, and it's fun to play too, I'll tell you that. But I could definitely see how that one threw you off, and then Falling to Pieces. Yeah, I think honestly, Falling to Pieces, even though it's also one of their more popular ones, I think it's the weakest one.
I think they just make some weird choices with the instrumentation.
It's a cool.
That.
I still like it. I won't skip it or anything. Like it has an iconic, bass intro. But the second half of this album, yeah, starting with Surprise You're Dead and the Zombie Eaters into the Real Thing, like those are three just bangers of songs.
Yeah, the B side of this album is
the B side
great.
Is the ultimate
fantastic
side. Yeah. So if you would have been producing them, you would have left Epic out, or at least left the rapping out of it.
Yeah. I would have left it out completely. I would have said no.
Well, let's look at some stats here. So in '89, the United Kingdom Kerrang gave it Album of the Year. It was the #1 album of the year, according to them. In '98, Kerrang also put it at number 50 in albums you must hear before you die. Classic Rock in 2001 gave it 64 out of the 100 greatest rock albums ever. And then it's also included, and a few of the albums we've done in the past, like Rest in Peace, the Black Flag album. I think all our metal and punk albums might have been on this list, maybe except for Anthrax. Sorry, Anthrax. But on 1,001 albums you must hear before you die.
Yeah.
But yeah, seriously, starting from out of nowhere, yeah, I think it's a great banger of an opening track. It's like, okay, this is their sound. This is Mike Patton. Here we go. And then
Yeah.
Epic for me, for you, it takes you out of the album. You're like, nah. For me, after appreciating it, and like I said, it was a song that really annoyed me as a child. I would hear it all the time, and his vocals just annoyed me.
Yeah.
But now, for me, Epic's like, all right, here we
Yeah.
go.
See, the
And
vocal, like his tone and stuff didn't annoy me. It was the rap. The rap
Okay.
part really threw me out. I mean, there are definitely singers out there where their tone just like the Cranberries.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I
I can't
know
really.
everyone holds her in really high regard. She passed away a while back, didn't she? Rest in peace. I don't want to take away from like them as artists, but I cannot stand her voice.
Right, and yeah, there's some
And
people like, I
and
mean,
there
it's just
and there's a couple songs as well by them that have been covered that I don't even like. Zombie.
that song gets
I
old, man.
hate
There you
that
go.
song. I hate it. It's a bad song. Even like the covers that have been done of it, it's bad. I don't like that
Right.
song.
A lot
But
of
I
people
know
do though.
but I know a
And
lot of people hold them in
yeah.
really high regard. And I'm like,
So
no.
here's what Jonathan Gold from the Los Angeles Times said about this album. Uh, the Kings of Neo Metal in 1990. While The Real Thing had been on the sales charts for 8 months, writing, Faith No More is a band with a punk rock bassist, a classically trained keyboardist. I love the keyboard work here too.
Oh yeah,
Like
there's some
there's a lot of
fun.
fun sounds, good stuff. Punk funk singer and a drummer who would probably rather be playing Ghanaian tribal music, which goes a long way toward explaining the band's diversity. And of course, there's heavy metal Jim, call what they do neo metal. Um, yeah, and they very much pioneered new metal for better or worse. There is some really good new metal bands. I think most of them are bad because they try so hard to like do what the good ones do, and it
Hmm.
doesn't come out organically. But yeah, System of a Down, they're one of my favorite bands, and like we wouldn't have that. Slipknot. While I'm not a huge fan of Slipknot, they got good songs, and yeah, they're very spooky.
Yeah.
But we literally very much want to have Slipknot without Corey Taylor seeing um Faith No More perform Epic.
Nice.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so, but I definitely see what you mean about Epic,
It
but
just
I've gotten
it
past
threw me
that.
off enough where if I'm being totally honest, if I wasn't listening to the album for an album review, I might have
You would have
turned it
quit?
off. I might
I'm
have
so
turned it
glad you
off.
didn't.
I'm glad I didn't either because again, the B side of the album is awesome, really good. But
Yeah.
if I had to grade this album, I would grade it as a B for the B side is awesome.
B for the B side. Nice. Um, for me, I think it's definitely one of those albums everyone should listen to, and some people may like it more or not. But that's a great thing about these album reviews. We're not always gonna like each other's stuff and all of it or some of it. And that's what keeps it interesting. But I'm glad you enjoyed the B side of this album because I also think that's the superior
Mm-hmm.
portion of this album. And it's in between Zombie Eaters and The Real Thing on like which song I think is the best. I think I might give it to Zombie Eaters. But The Real Thing is
Yeah.
also very epic, a very awesome ballad. I don't know. It's just yeah, that second half of the album, Underwater Love. I think that's a really cool one that leads from The Real Thing because it literally just leads straight from it, same key, and it just works really well. Um, and I think like Jim Martin's triplets that he does in Zombie Eaters, how they come back in The Real Thing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad they're not in every song. That would be repetitive, but it gives it like that tonal, like musical through line. like this
Yeah.
is the same story, or this is this is. And often bands, the B-side will be the portion of the album that is more cohesive, finishes up the story. The A side will be just like kind of singles put together, and then the B side, here's you know the real magic for the real fans. If you get to this part,
Yeah.
but yeah, let's look at some. But if you thought this album was like crazy all over the place, go listen to Angel Dust. But diehard Faith No More fans claim that one's better,
Yeah.
or at least as good. But let's see, The Real Thing sales. Then we're gonna move on to your next album.
Um. Sorry about that silence there. I was looking something
Also,
up.
hell of an album cover. I love the album cover. Best-selling album by Faith No More is The Real Thing, which sold over 1.2 million copies release. And now it has sold over 20 million. So yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, I'm so glad I got to talk about that. We got to talk about that album.
Yeah.
But it's funny that Epic, their biggest song, is the one your least favorite. But
Yeah.
often there's a lot of popular mainstream stuff that I don't understand, especially nowadays. But let me see on Spotify. I'm curious. I know We Care a Lot had a big surge again because Guardians of the Galaxy featured it.
Oh yeah.
But let's look at their top 5. So yeah, number 1, Epic, then Easy from Angel Dust, then We Care a Lot, then Midlife Crisis from Angel Dust, which that actually is a really cool song. It's kind of weird, but it's cool. But yeah, Epic. But yeah, I would say the one that surprised, and yeah, I love their cover War Pit Pigs, but the one that surprised me the most was Surprise You're Dead, obviously.
Yeah. No, that one was pretty rad.
Surprise. Okay. Anyways,
Yeah.
let's move on to your next album. I really enjoyed listening to this one too.
It's a pretty big switch in gears from
Yes.
from Faith No More.
Lots of
I wanted to
switches
talk
here.
about Frank Turner, his 2018 album Be More Kind.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk about this just because I've just generally been into Frank Turner a lot the last year or so. And I think out of his newer releases, this one.
Now, what band was Frank Turner part of before this? Or has he always been solo?
I mean, back before he went breakout, he has played in bands, but he's always been. It's Frank Turner and the Sleeping Souls is his.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, his first album was like 2005 or something like that. And
so he's been around.
Yeah, and he's kind of fits into the folk punk genre, but not exactly. It's kind of folk punk, kind of
this album
Brit pop, I guess.
Right, yeah. It's definitely a more pop sounding album. It walks, but I think it does a really good job of still staying in the folk punk lane, but just a little bit more.
It feels very genuine,
positive messages. It's very earnest. It's an earnest album.
It's why I've been into Frank Turner for 2 reasons. Most of his stuff feels very genuine, and also, it's not that he doesn't touch on difficult topics ever. Some of his songs touch on addiction and problems like that, but he seems to, from his songwriting, have a positive outlook on the world.
I'm just looking at his discography. The album that came before this is Positive Songs for Negative People.
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of a story with that. So when what I was reading is with positive songs for negative people, he had been arguing with the um his producers on that album.
Yeah.
And according to him, this is a quote from him, he believed that he was in a position where said in a position where my artistic integrity was on the line. Um, and he
Oh, I
also
see
told
that, yeah.
and he told the same magazine that he believed the album was emptying out one particularly creative cupboard. And he was in the middle of trying to decide precisely which direction I wanted to head in next. So it's kind of, and I heard an interview with him a while
Running
back
him dry.
where he was talking about this album, Be More Kind. And it was kind of like he generally, from what I understand, likes to write albums. He doesn't just write songs and then squish them all together into an album. He
Right.
goes forward with like a purpose in, you know, and sometimes he'll write songs that just kind of end up fitting into an album somewhere. But and I think I heard him talk about somewhere that he was working on something else, and events took place in the world, and he felt like he had to write switch directions in what he was writing. And by events, I mean Donald Trump was elected in 2016, and all of that shit started.
Well, one of the songs is "Make America Great Again."
Yeah, he's
which is very much a satire on that whole statement, you know.
Yeah, this whole album is not shy about it's definitely a response to that whole movement.
I really love the title track here. It was really nice to hear. In a world that has decided that it's going to lose its mind, be more kind, my friends. Try to be more kind. That's just a sweet message.
Yeah,
that's something we all need, I think.
The whole album just
yeah.
Again, it's why I've just appreciated Frank Turner. Is he's just there's so many artists out there that who just like they write, you know, really angry or depressing stuff, or it doesn't seem earnest. And Frank Turner walks this line of like he is writing positive stuff that also seems earnest
and genuine. And yeah, a lot of guys will write stuff just to be angry and cynical, but it doesn't feel like it really came from their.
Or even some like pop music will have positive messages, but it's like you don't get the feeling that it's earnest, that it's like genuinely coming from this person. And so I just appreciate the fact that there are some artists out there who are just like, you know what, I'm done being negative.
So when I first listened to this album, it gave me those autumn freshman year of college energy vibes.
Yeah,
that's what I felt. That's what it reminded me of. It's very comforting, and I like the messages, and it's just nice to hear an album that you really feel that he means what he's singing.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of good tracks on here. I mean, I don't know all the names, but one of them is like, "Oh, there she is." I like "Be More Kind," "Make America Great Again." That's a good one.
One of my favorites a lot of is tracks, 1933.
I definitely listened to it. I can't quite remember.
1933 is the more like driving, like punk sounding song.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There is some punk stuff.
And it's definitely about like facing fascists. Like it's not shy about it. It's there's my favorite line in lyrics in this is if I was of the greatest generation, I'd be pissed. Surveying the world that I built, slipping back into this, I'd be screaming at my grandkids, we already did this.
It's just simple answers. That shit's for fascists and maybe teenagers. You can't fix the world if all you have is a hammer.
Yeah, and then the chorus line that gets repeated is "Stop mistaking your house burning down for the dawn." You know, that's a good song. It's definitely the angriest on the album. But a more positive song that I love, "Little Changes." It's just like a happy, like just snapping along.
I gotta get the door. I'll be right back.
Right,
I'm back.
Uh, but yeah, no, it's just little changes has is just a nice happy
For me, it's pretty much just a
song.
comforting album.
Yeah.
But it's I will need to listen to it more. I definitely listen to Exile on Main Street a lot more.
Hmm.
It was just what I
Yeah.
was in the mood for, but this is definitely one I will be going back to and definitely gonna throw some of these songs into a playlist.
Yeah.
Good
I
stuff.
just generally kind of wanted to highlight Frank Turner. Um,
Yeah,
because it's not like he's unpopular. Um, but he also doesn't get a lot of coverage.
right.
Either. Uh and oh, this is fun. On the Wikipedia page for Frank Turner, it says the first record Turner owned was the album Killers by Iron Maiden.
Really.
Um,
See, you would have never have guessed that.
yeah,
Great Maiden
but
album, by the way.
some good albums. So this one, Be More Kind, 2018. Just to recommend a couple other pretty good ones. England Keep My Bones from 2011 is pretty good. Poetry of the Deed from 2009 is pretty good. Love Iron Song is one of his more um, mainstream ones. But yeah, Frank Turner, Be More Kind. There's not much else to say about it. It's just a fun, positive album.
Yeah, it definitely will cheer you up, I
Yeah.
would say. All right, so the final album we have here, released early this year, back in February. This is our newest one. And like I said, there was a few albums released this year that I could have done, but I decided to go with This Is Why by Paramore.
Mm-hmm.
And they and yeah, Haley Williams, great vocalist, one of the greatest modern female rock vocalists out there.
Yeah.
And Paramore has had a very interesting like evolution as a band. They very much so started as like emo rock, alt rock, emo punk, and then going into pop punk, and then going a little bit too into pop, I would say. But it was some of their stuff in the mid 20 teens, and
Yeah.
then coming around to this album, uh,
It's
this
not
is
what I
also
expected from Paramore.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not what you would expect. There's definitely songs on here, and there's definitely like Paramore, their sound is there somewhere, but
Mm-hmm.
and that's mostly because you got Haley Williams.
Yeah.
That's how you recognize it as Paramore, because aside from a couple songs, this is a very new, fresh um uh, take. I mean, it's got a lot of cool dance numbers in here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, pop punk sort of songs, artsy, very jazzy. There's a lot of cool guitar and elements and like rhythmic elements here.
Mm-hmm.
A
Yeah.
lot of cool stuff going on. And I remember their song "This Is Why" came out late last year, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Wow, this is a fun, refreshing, cool, like pop jazzy dance number." And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm definitely gonna check this album out. And then they came out with the news. I think a couple of months after that single, and I was like, okay, this is kind of more like this chorus is more reminiscent of classic Paramore, and it has more of a rock vibe to it, but it still has interesting chords and melody going on.
Yeah.
And then the album came out. And yeah, some of my standout tracks is This Is Why is definitely like the big pop dance number. The News, I think, is a great one. I just
Mm-hmm.
talked about, but C'est comme ça, that's a
Yeah.
fun poppy number.
That
And
was fun.
that means it is what it is, essentially, in French. Running Out of Time, I think that's also a really fun one, a more dancier one.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have songs like Big Man, Little Dignity. That's a more contemplative, more mature kind of
Yeah.
um lingering song, and I love Haley Williams vocals there. And apparently, like even on their Spotify, when you go to the album, they have like a video introduction and stuff talking
Oh,
about the album.
cool.
And they
Yeah.
said the whole album came off of this song called Thick Skull, which is the final song of this album. And it's
Yeah.
one of the best ones.
Oh, that's a good one.
Um,
Yeah.
Crave is good. It very much so reminds me of old school Paramore, but I would say the most like classic Paramore you can find on here is probably gonna be You First. That has
Hmm.
like a huge rock chorus,
Yeah.
and it has those big driving guitars in there. But what I like, it's not just there's just a lot of interesting stuff going on. There's piano, there's a lot of interesting percussion here. The bass is doing cool. Like the bass track on This Is Why.
Hmm.
That's a great bass track. Um, but it's just yeah, the only Paramore I've ever listened to in the past is like their one Twilight music video song,
Uh-huh.
How'd We Get Here or whatever it's
I
called.
see,
Uh
I've really over the years not paid any attention to Paramore because of like that phase of Paramore.
early, yeah, the
Early
beginnings of
Paramore.
Paramore.
And it's not like I thought they were bad ever. I just it's
Just wasn't your thing. It wasn't
not
my
my
thing
thing.
either.
Yeah.
I
So
never thought they were bad. I thought I respected them. I thought they were good. I was
there
like,
are
yeah,
plenty of
Haley.
bands that like I think are perfectly fine that are good bands.
Mhm.
That's just I don't listen
Just
to
not your
them.
thing. But
Yeah.
and I was like, and
Um
I've always been a supporter of Haley Williams. She's awesome.
mhm.
She's a
Yeah.
great vocalist. I love her stuff. But this album has like just like a lot of kind of reminds me of have you ever heard of the band Block Party? There's a lot of stuff like that in
No.
here. A lot of Talking Heads type stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
with the dance numbers
That's what
and
surprised me is it was very like art rock in some
yeah,
ways.
very much so
And
artsy.
I can
Yeah.
dig art rock sometimes. And this
Yes.
was it surprised me. It took me off guard. I
And
yeah.
overall, I think it's just a great listen, fun
Yeah.
listen, a nice, quick. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's what about 30
It's
30ish minutes?
36 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's perfect
Um
length for this kind of thing. And
yeah.
honestly, Arctic Monkeys also like just like the year before this came out, like a few months before this came out,
Hmm.
they came out with their album The Car, which goes extremely artsy and jazzy. In fact, you
Yeah.
wouldn't even have thought it was the Arctic Monkeys,
It's
like
yeah, it's
whatsoever. I think maybe they took it a little too far with the jazzy stuff. You expect some driving guitars in there or something. I still think that's a cool, interesting album, but I
hmm
think this one does a better job of going more artsy, jazzy, a little bit of funkiness, but
yeah.
still, you're like, yeah, that's Paramore. Like Haley Williams is doing her thing, and you have songs in here that are more reminiscent of their more like emo rock vibes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think there's some cool like the news. I think that's just a really good critique on news media, social media influencers, and like the whole idea is like, oh yeah, the war in like Ukraine or wherever. It's
Hmm.
like, oh, we're making posts about it. We're talking about,
Yeah.
showing you how much we care, but it's like you're not doing anything. You're just looking for attention off of people's tragedies, and I think that's a good one. Running Out of Time I think is a very fun one, very musically interesting, and it really hits home with me.
Hmm.
Like this, the second verse, never mind, I hit the snooze on my alarm 20 times, but I was just so tired. There was traffic, spilled my coffee, crashed my car, otherwise would have been there on time.
Yeah.
And what that just a very simple concept of running late.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
don't have a lot to say about the album. It surprised me. I thought it was good.
what's some
Um,
standout songs for you?
Big Man, Little Dignity. I thought that was really
Yeah,
good.
that one really kind of came out and that was a good break.
Yeah.
Like
Figure Eight. I
it's
thought that
over.
was a pretty good one. Um,
Yeah.
uh, yeah. The news. Yeah.
I actually have this album on record on vinyl too.
Oh,
I have
sick.
the gold
Yeah.
gold album.
It's a
It's pretty
nice,
cool.
cool cover album or cover art. I mean,
Yeah, no, it's not a not
cover
a
album,
cover album.
cover art.
Oh yeah, pressing their
here.
face against
It's a cool one.
the glass.
Simple.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, I don't have much else to say about it. I liked it.
But do you think this is an album you would go back to
I
for
think
like a
so.
fun, cool pop rock
Yeah,
artsy?
I think if I was in the mood, every once in a while I go through my phases for like a couple weeks straight where I just
Yeah.
listen to a bunch of indie rock.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's definitely in the indie rock
And yeah,
scene.
this one probably will stay in my rotation.
And what I really like about it, just to explain more on like the instrumentation and everything, there's a lot of fun textures going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Like the
Yeah.
guitars doing stuff that you may not think would work, but it does work. There's a lot of percussiveness and like the strumming and stuff like that. Um, and just interesting chords and just it's it's titillating. It's a titillating album. And
Yeah.
I think yeah, I think it works very well. I could say I'm at least you know, I could say I'm a Paramore fan just for this album alone. If they did another one that was like this, I'd be all for it. But I also encourage them to experiment more because it'll be interesting to see what happens. Um, so and yeah, it's just I love their whole evolution. Yeah, like nothing against their early work, but starting out from an emo rock band,
Mm-hmm.
with their song with Twilight, and yeah, we did our Twilight commentaries,
Yeah.
so check that out. But and then going to this, very much more mature, contemplative, experimental, artsy rock album is just really cool. And I think it's a great example of a band dramatically changing their sound but keeping the core ideas there, and the
Yeah.
signature. You have Haley Williams and her signature vocals, like that's Haley Williams. Like listen to any Paramore song that you don't even know, you could put it on, that's Haley Williams.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think that very much so works in its favor. I think if you had anyone else doing this, it just wouldn't hit the right way, and yeah, I think it's great stuff, and I'm glad we got to talk about it.
Definitely.
Yeah, it just came out this year, and yeah, like I said, it's been a banger year for alternative music.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a pretty good group of albums
Good
there.
place in there.
Yeah.
All
Unless you have
right.
anything else you want to touch on, but I don't really have anything else.
Go ahead and check out the music videos are pretty fun too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Especially running out of time, it's like a Alice in Wonderland thing.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun.
Same thing with Frank Turner. He has a couple music videos out there that are
Music videos.
Little Changes has a music video that's fun, and it's him just dancing but being
Nice.
bad.
I like that.
It's like he has some like three professional dancers who are really good, and he's trying to follow their dance routine, but he's really bad at it.
Before we go
fun,
on, here's some quotes and critiques on This Is Why.
Yeah.
Reviewing the album from M&E, Sophie Williams found it to be as in tune with the textures of today's forward-thinking rock as much as it is a love letter to Paramore's brilliantly cosmic early days. And yeah, I think that's a great way to sum it up. It is exploring this new rock scene that we're kind of getting here, where things are kind of getting jazzy again, art rock again. That dance rock is coming back again, which is I'm all for it. But it still has that Paramore core to it for the old fans, and I think you have to have that for it to be Paramore, obviously. But it never feels like too self-indulgent of an album. Like it's trying to be intellectual. Like the lyrics are quite simple a lot of times. It are just very common things that everybody goes through, like with running out of time. So it's artsy, but it's never pretentious. And
Yeah.
I think that's an important balance to strike too with like art rock stuff.
This is
Never want to be pretentious with your
Eames
albums.
Taylor of Clash praised the songwriting, stating, it's a disservice to call any Paramore album the most anything, but something
Right.
about the songwriting on This Is Why It are undeniably the most something. Williams both elegant and sandpaper coarse, depending on what it's called for.
Yeah, she has a great dynamics with her voice. Yeah.
No, I appreciated this album, and again, it's not that I like thought Paramore was bad or anything. I just mostly ignored Paramore for a long time.
Right.
So when you sent this,
No, say with
when
me,
you
and then
texted me and said, you're picking a Paramore album. I was like,
I actually
okay.
saw what really first got my attention. I saw just check out his this YouTube channel, Justin Hawkins Rides Again. He's the guy from the band The Darkness. I believe in a thing called love. That song. He's that guy, and he played at the Taylor Hawkins tribute show. He sang the Van Halen song, and I was like, wow, he's a really good singer. But he has a YouTube channel where he does like critiques and analyzes different songs, albums, whatnot, music videos, whatnot of new bands, old stuff. And he did a video on this, and I was like, wow, Paramore, okay, let's go. Haley Williams, let's go. And she is she's from Nashville, and you can hear some of that twang in her voice too, which is good,
Yeah.
Or I know she's from Tennessee at least. Anyways, yeah, I think that's a good place to end here. We will be here next week for another episode of the Odd Drunk Pod. Go check us out at Odd Drunk Pod on Instagram. We may or may not do a TikTok. I don't know. We're thinking about ideas for a TikTok. But yeah, give us a rating or review on your preferred platform of choice. I saw we got some more on Spotify. I would like to. I love seeing what you guys think of us, and even if it's just a 5 stars, but I would really prefer a written review. That would be really cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just hit that subscribe button on whatever it's called on your platform, and keep up with us because we got a lot of different stuff. We have a whole catalog of stuff. We've been doing this a while now, and it's still fun. That's the important part. It's still fun.
Yes.
Anyways, we'll see you guys next week. Any last words?
Go listen to the Odd Drunk playlist.
Yes. Check it out and listen to these albums too.
Yeah.
This is not a test. I repeat, this is not a test. The Odd Drunk Podcast recommends you follow their Instagram and join their Facebook group for more fun content. To visit all of our current streaming and social media platforms, visit the link tree in the description. If you enjoy the show, we would be appreciated it if you would leave a review on Apple Podcasts. The Odd Drunk Podcast would like to remind you to drink responsibly and not to drink and drive. Okay Colton, you can roll the outro now.